I've just signed an executive order to give partial tariff rebates to any company that assembles its cars right here in the U.S.
President Donald Trump this week easing off the auto tariff accelerator. In March, Trump announced a 25% tariff on imported cars and parts. That's set to go into effect this weekend. But now, U.S. manufacturers could be reimbursed on imported parts up to 3.75% of the value of a domestically produced car. After a year, that drops to 2.5%.
It's barely any relief at all, and it only lasts for 2 years, and it only applies to automakers that assemble cars in the United States. For those that do not assemble vehicles in the U.S., this is going to be a disaster.
Autoline's John McElroy says auto companies are bulking up their inventories to stave off immediate tariff impact, but those will be depleted come July.
And that's when I predict you're going to see new car sales in the U.S. nosedive.
The CEOs of Ford and GM bracing for the changes.
You know, the stuff we built now is priced. If we announce a price increase now, it'll go into play in July and August.
What we provided in our guidance is that pricing is going to stay about at the same levels that it is.
But experts like McElroy estimate cost for a car could jump by thousands, depending upon the model.
That will cause car sales to go down, and in some cases, it's going to lead to layoffs. If I had to buy another car right now, whether it's new or used, I would rush out and try to buy it.
In Washington, Brian Abel reporting.
Okay, you ready?
Ready or not, tariffs are here. And it's affecting Chris Wiley's Hot Desert Air Conditioning and Cooling Company.
Oh, we're probably down about 25%.
Wiley has seen the cost of tariffs trickling down on his commercial projects. He says most of his parts and units come from China and then manufactured in Mexico before being brought into the States. This results in higher prices or equipment simply not being available.
There's a couple jobs where I don't have coverage. So I just have a job, I have a contract, I'm liable, I have to provide the equipment, but I just can't get it.
And for homeowners, Wiley suggests now is the time to get your AC units looked at, just in case you need a new part or a whole new unit.
So capacitors are kind of like batteries. They go bad every so often.
What can a homeowner expect if they wait till June or July when their HVAC system breaks down? Tariffs have kicked in.
I think that there's just going to be a point when there's no air conditioners available. Like the common sizes for houses are just going to be like, they're just not available.
Which is why homeowner John Fott wanted to stay ahead.
Yeah, I'm glad it's getting done now, and it is now making me think, should I think of other things?
Anybody that thinks that they're deferring this problem to later is going to help them. Later's going to come and it'll still be the same problem.
At a higher cost.
Yep.
Costs that will continue to go up, just like the temps will soon be getting.
We're just going through it to make sure it's ready for summer.
It's a new chapter and a delicate moment for Korean Air. A redesigned look announcing a long-awaited acquisition of its former rival, Asiana Airlines. Korean Air CEO Walter Cho tells us plans for new planes and upgrades to all cabin classes are still moving forward, even when tariff turbulence rattles the travel industry.
Do you see a downturn when it comes to passenger volume here? Or are you thinking that you're going to be okay through this?
Well, we're already seeing the downturn in passenger volume between Trans-Pacific and also to Europe.
How big?
Subtle, maybe 5% compared to last year, but it has some significant impact to our business.
That is, if the current downturn lasts all year. Cho says he projects Korean Air to stay in positive territory in 2025. But advisory firm Tourist Economics projects under an expanded trade war scenario, international inbound visits to the U.S. could decline by 12.7%, a $22 billion annual loss in inbound travel spending. Cho says for now, there's some resilience in the skies.
The reservation data for this summer is very strong. Starting June, mid-June, everything's full. I'm not planning to downsize in our cargo. I mean, we're going to refocus our volume to Europe and other places where demand will still be there.
Then there's buying American. In March, Korean Air finalized its biggest ever deal with Boeing, an order for up to 50 wide-body planes, a $32 billion deal hailed by the Trump administration. We asked if Cho sees this as a move to strengthen ties with the U.S.
Yes, but I was always a Boeing fan, so to speak. I always have, well, there's only two choices. But I always trusted Boeing, and I would always go to Boeing for my needs.
As major U.S. carriers reduce routes, Cho says Korean Air isn't cutting any, adding flights to L.A. and Atlanta, betting big on America and that trade war winds will soon calm.
President Donald Trump choosing Michigan for his Day 100 rally. The state was key to his victory last fall and is key to the U.S. auto industry, with 1 in 5 jobs there linked to the auto industry.
A lot of auto jobs coming. Watch what's happening.
His new executive order and proclamation to ease auto tariffs would continue the 25% tariff on imported cars and put a new 25% tariff on auto parts into effect this weekend, as previously announced. They also allow reimbursements for domestic car producers importing car parts. And they consolidate auto-related tariffs.
They all want to come back to Michigan and build cars again. You know why? Because of our tax and tariff policy.
While the 3 large U.S. automakers, General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis, formerly Chrysler, thank Trump for the softer stance on auto tariffs, not everyone is thrilled about the president's policies. On his 100th day of the Trump administration, various surveys and polls show growing pessimism amongst U.S. consumers, with much of the consumer sentiment hinged on Trump's volatile tariff policy.
In these 100 days, what has gone up? Cost of groceries, up. Energy costs, up. Cost of clothes, of homes, of cars, up. What has dropped? Your retirement and 401ks, down.
I'm Sherelle Hubbard reporting.
In our Money Lead, and we're back with our series talking to small business owners from coast to coast about President Trump's tariffs. Many we've heard from are not thrilled with the impact of the tariff. Some have been reaping the benefits. Craig Reeves is joining us now from Beaufort, South Carolina, talking about a coast. He's the owner of CJ Seafood and Sea Eagle Market and Good Eats. Craig, you've been a shrimper for most of your life. I'm sure you've seen a lot of changes to the industry during the time. What is it like for someone like you who sources products domestically to have to compete with imports?
Well, thanks for having me. It's been a real rough the last handful of years with the dumping of the imports into our market. So it's really been tough.
And what about the effect of these tariffs? What has been the effect so far? Do you support them?
Yes, we support the tariffs. We thank President Trump for bringing this to the forefront. The domestic seafood industry has been decimated over the last 3 or 4 decades by imports.
Have you seen any specific change in your business, in your customers, since these tariffs went into effect?
Well, yeah, it's really brought it to the forefront that people didn't understand that 94% of the seafood, the shrimp particularly, that's consumed in the United States is import. And that's coming from India, all over Southeast Asia, Ecuador. But India and Ecuador are the 2 big ones that are dumping, which means that they're flooding the markets with imported shrimp.
If the Trump administration continues with high tariffs on imports, do you think that the domestic seafood industry in the United States will be able to grow to meet demand?
Well, ultimately, we appreciate the tariffs, but we understand that tariffs are going to probably be negotiated to a point that it may not really matter. We're grateful for what it's doing right now. But we have to bring attention to these imports that have a great cost, environmental cost to human trafficking and slave labor, forced labor in India. CNN has done great work in documenting this in the past. So there's a lot of issues with imported seafood, and it's really not seafood, it's pond food, and they use antibiotics, and this stuff is coming into the country at you talk about open borders, at the ports of entry at an inspection rate of less than 1%.
What else can the federal government do to support your industry beyond the tariffs?
Well, these executive orders that President Trump has been signing recently is going to allow the regulatory agencies to maybe give us some relief, and then also the FDA can look at what the USDA did in the catfish industry and then apply that to shrimp. Like I said, we have less than a 1% inspection rate, and then when these things are found to have antibiotics and stuff, we just turn them loose, and now we have the mechanisms to hold and even destroy this seafood.
All right, Craig Reeves in Beaufort, South Carolina. Thank you so much for your time, sir. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, sir, for having me.
General Motors CEO Mary Barra joins us now. So as John just said, Mary, GM cut the forecast for earnings up to 30%. You gave a range, but earlier this week you'd suspended all future guidance earlier in the week because of the sudden change in tariffs. So Mary, I really appreciate your time. When you did that unprecedented step of suspending the earnings forecast because of Trump's tariff adjustment earlier in the week, you also suspended your stock buyback program to conserve cash. And now we've got this letter you've put out. I know you're going to be talking to investors just moments after you finish talking to us. But when you look at the situation here, the tariff exposure that you put out is $4 to $5 billion. What does that mean, Mary? Do you assume that you're passing some of that cost on to buyers or not?
Well, when we look at the overall $4 to $5 billion impact from tariffs that we shared, that is what we know now based on the clarity that we're given, and we are very appreciative that the president provided that clarity. We actually delayed this conversation with you and with our investors for a couple days because we knew we had been working with the administration for several months, working with the president and many members of his administration. So they understood our industry, the complexities of the supply chain, and the capital-intensive nature of our business. And so when we understood that announcement was actually, and the actions were going to become official on Tuesday, we thought it was better to wait and be able to provide the guidance that we did. As it relates to the $4 to $5 billion, there are many steps that we can take to offset. For instance, we've already added more than 50,000 on an annualized basis trucks that we'll be building in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And there's other moves that we can make. We already have a very U.S.-centered supply base. Over 80% of the parts that go into our vehicles are already USMCA compliant, and the lion's share of that is U.S. So there's many steps that we can take to offset the $4 to $5 billion, but we wanted to be transparent and share. That's the impact right now.
So, just looking through this, though, of course, February 1st, tariffs were announced, then they changed in March, then they changed again in March. Now they've changed in April. I mean, Mary, I know you've spoken to President Trump directly about the tariffs. When is the last time you spoke to him? And was it this week, post his most recent shift? And has he given you the confidence that this is it, that you actually know the rules of the game and they're not going to change again?
Well, I spoke to the president when I last visited the White House, but I've been speaking to many members of his administration multiple times a day over the last several weeks. So I've had regular communications and really feel that the White House and the administration are listening to understand the situation. And so we do know that there's more conversations going on. For instance, the negotiations going on with Japan and South Korea, China, and many of the other countries that impact from a supply chain perspective. So we think that there's more impact potentially. But again, right now, the clarity that we got was so important because it allows us to make decisions for our footprint in the U.S. and in North America to be able to respond to the tariffs and make sure that we have a growing and strong U.S. auto industry.
So yesterday, Jim Farley, the CEO of Ford, was with us here yesterday morning, about the same time as you and I are talking right now. And he said that he cannot commit to not raising prices this summer. Okay, so he was very clear about that, Mary. But he did say they are extending their employee pricing to all consumers through July 4th. I know that GM thus far has stayed away from incentive pricing. Are you going to have any incentives for buyers, whether employee pricing or anything else, between now and July 4th?
Well, if you look at our portfolio, the strong ICE, our internal combustion engine and EV portfolio that we have been able to maintain strong pricing and low incentives because customers want our vehicles. And so what we've said is we believe, and what we provided in our guidance is that pricing is going to stay about at the same levels that it is. And when you talk about whether you use employee pricing, those are just different tools to provide incentives. We're going to stay very disciplined in our incentives. We're one of the lowest in the industry from an incentive perspective. And so we're going to continue to evaluate pricing. I mean, pricing changes in our industry at least monthly and sometimes more frequently. Incentive levels change, et cetera. So we're going to respond to the market. We're going to stay disciplined because it's so disciplined that we protect the residuals of our vehicles, because that's important to our customers from a resale value.
Yes. I'm just curious, though, because obviously $4 to $5 billion, it's a massive amount of money, but trying to put it down to what it means to the price of an individual car. Patrick Anderson Economic Group, and it does the pricing per car, right? So for GM, Mary, he looked at the Suburban, the Yukon, the Escalade, and with the new tariff adjustments, so obviously a little bit of an improvement in the overall tariff impact on a car, he still gets to a tariff impact for each of those vehicles of about $8,000 a car. So $4 to $5 billion on earnings can boil down to, if you're going to go buy an Escalade, to $8,000. I guess the bottom line question is, Mary, is GM going to eat the whole $8,000, or are you going to have to pass some of that to consumers, and soon?
What we are going to do is work to get U.S. content up. And for the vehicles you're specifically talking to, they're made in Texas. And with 80% USMCA compliant parts, the tariff on those vehicles is actually quite a bit less than the number that you're talking about. So we're going to evaluate each product. But I think for pricing, it's so important in our industry that we stay competitive. And for General Motors, we continue to leverage the strong demand that we have. In the first quarter for those vehicles specifically, we saw a 30% year-over-year increase in demand for those products. So I think that speaks to the strength of our portfolio, and it's a differentiator for General Motors.